Okay, all right, so I'm doing this video so I can talk about how to survive on an all-inclusive resort if you are a vegetarian, vegan, plant-based, any base where you don't eat meat, cheese, milk, all of that standard stuff. So when I say survive because you might not thrive on an all-inclusive resort if it's an average all-inclusive resort, because there's not a lot of options for us. There's not a lot of options for us because they don't take into account the new lifestyles that are coming to existence. No, actually, um, it's been around for a long time. So I feel like people just are slow with getting to make these changes. And I know the majority of people still eat like a standard diet with meat and everything. Like, majority of people just eat anything. Like, you put it on a plate in front of them, they're not gonna ask if it got this, if it got that. They're just gonna eat it. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, this is what these hotels are catered to. Just people who eat just average food. Like, they just eat anything you bring to them. So here's gonna be my tips helping you survive. So we just came from Cancun. We were in Cancun. We were at an all-inclusive resort. So we got put on all-inclusive resorts like a few years ago because we stayed at an all-inclusive resort in the Virgin Islands. This was years ago, and it wasn't all-inclusive. And I feel like we had to really make it our business to go out and search for food. And it was crazy because if you ever been to Virgin Islands, right? You might even be from there, but it's like all these kind of mountains and hills and stuff, and then their driving is on the opposite side. Like, I'm from the US, and the steering wheel is on the left side, but we were on the right. The steering wheel was on the right side, and then we had this car. The fact is that we had to go out and we had to get our food, and it was kind of stressful. So from that point, we were like, okay, so we're gonna get all-inclusive resorts, right? So we went to an all-inclusive resort, and what had me excited was that when I looked up the resort, they had like a few different restaurants, and the restaurant said that they had vegetarian and vegan options. Okay, I'm gonna explain why trusting that can be a mistake. I'm gonna explain that later in the video. But let me show you, or let me give you some tips on what we learned and to the way to, like I said, survive at these all-inclusive resorts. I mean, this can help you really with any restaurant that you go to, but all-inclusive resorts, those resorts, they're really supposed to make sure that you have a good experience, and you pay the kind of money where it's kind of their job to make sure you have a good experience. So the one that we go to, when you first get there, they ask you if you have any diet restrictions, and you have a certain room that you're assigned to. Every restaurant you go to, they ask you your room number so it can pop up any restrictions that you have, dietary restrictions. So, and then when the waiter comes over, they ask you if you have any dietary restrictions. So that's one thing. If the hotel or if the resort doesn't ask you specifically if you have dietary restrictions, make sure you tell them your dietary restrictions up front. When you're ordering food, right? So here's the mistake we made when it says vegetarian option. So me and my husband, we are plant-based, right? So we're not like a new age vegan kind of, the term changed so many times. It's like so many different things that you have to do to be. I don't really care about being a technical vegan. Like, we still eat honey. We don't eat meat, we don't eat cheese, dairy, none of that stuff, but we still consume honey. And technically vegans don't eat honey. So that's why we're plant-based, like, I don't really care what you call me, but I don't eat meat, I don't eat milk. So that's basically the whole basis of this video. How to survive. You don't eat milk. Milk and meat, that's one of the most common components to meals that they try and serve you. So like I said, when you go to an all-inclusive resort, they're supposed to cater to you and help you to have a good trip. So obviously a very important part of the trip is going to be having food to eat that you can eat. So The first tip was, and I don't have like a list of tips, it's just going to be like from the things that I remember, since it's still fresh in my brain. It's going to be telling them that you have dietary restrictions. And for the resort that I went to, they have the menu out. They had it out really within, it was like during the hours that they have the specific meal of the day. So the breakfast menu, that was the same every day, but it came out during a time where breakfast was going to be starting. Same with the lunch menu. You couldn't see it all day, but after you stay there for a while, you realize they have the same menus on different days. But the fact is that if you can see the menu prior to actually going down to the restaurant, just take a look at the menu. We would take a look at the menu and we would look at the things they had, and then we'd be like, okay, we can get this right here, just have them take the cheese off, or we can get this right here and we can take this cream off, or just ask them for it without the cream. So those are things, just like going to a typical restaurant. You'd be like, okay, can I have this, but can you just take the cheese off of it? They try and put cheese on everything, and milk, and anywhere they can put it. And it was crazy because this resort, literally, they're vegetarian. It just, everything had cheese and milk. Everything. Like, we thought that some things that we would be able to get that didn't have that, but literally everything. The whole time we were there, there was only one vegan option, 100% vegan option, and it was cake, so like I said, my other tip is to look at the menu prior to going to the restaurant and figuring out what you can eat before you get there, because you know how you get there and you're looking at the menu, you don't want to be sitting at the table for super long. So we would look at it up in a room so we can decide on what we thought we wanted to eat. Then we went down there, until we got down there and they told us that, oh no, the noodles have this or egg in it, and then that's when it crushes your dreams. But most times there's still other options. Let's see, what other things do I have? So yeah, going and looking at the menu prior, and also telling them about your dietary restrictions. And also, so when you're in another country, especially, so I know I'm from the United States. I'm from the States, and you know what I'm saying, that the primary language is English, but where we went, the primary language was Spanish. And so when you're going to different countries that you're not familiar with, sometimes the meals that they have, you don't really know what they are. Like, it'll say, this, and it'll be something you never heard of. So then, like, literally we would just look it up, like, what is this? And then it'll be like, okay, so this is, a meat dish with this. So we'd be like, okay, we can't eat that. It wasn't things that we really understood. So definitely Googling things helped us a lot, because when we looked on the menu, even though something sounded good, we may have never heard of it. Some things have like a meat base, and without the meat, it's nothing. And so you have to make sure you know at least what it is that you're looking at before you go ask for it. And then the primary part of the meal is a big chunk of meat. So I would say that too, just looking up the meals, making sure you understand, because if you go to other countries, going to resorts in other countries, sometimes the meals on the menu you may not be familiar with. And even if it's in the same country, because a lot of these resorts have chefs, and not everybody is just like a chef. Like, I know how to cook, but I'm not like a chef. So they got like fancy names for everything that I never heard of. Something I might call pasta, they might be like, something ziti linguine. And it's like, okay, so this is basically pasta with some sauce on it. But they have like, fancy names for it. So, but especially noticed it, like I said, in other countries. So definitely telling them your dietary restrictions, looking at the menu ahead of time, and also just I don't want to say like lowering your expectation, but in a way you do have to lower your expectation, because you can't eat a lot of things like on these typical menus. Now they do have some. This trip really inspired us to start looking into some resorts that actually cater to the way that we eat. And there were some like resorts that were kind of like popular resorts that had like a lot of vegetarian, vegan options that we're definitely going to explore. But if you find yourself like us and you're trapped and it's too late, you know, you have the reservation, you have your room, and it's too late to like go to another hotel, then like I said, how to survive when you're in a situation already. So yeah, those are my biggest tips. To make sure they know your dietary restrictions, to research what the actual dish is if you're not familiar with it, and to I also when we looked at the menus, we like I said, we figured out a way that we can change it, or we could change it. Like what we can ask, like okay, I'd be like, I want this, but without like the whipped cream. Obviously, we know whipped cream. You know. Oh, also, we had to do some real research. So it really wasn't a plant-based. Like they just didn't know a lot about it at all. That's why I was so surprised that the menu even. It was like, you know how they always trying to advertise stuff to you, like oh the you know, the options, organic fresh fruits and vegetables and vegetarian options. So I was surprised that they even said that, because the staff didn't know a lot about it. And then some of the staff, even though a lot of them are really nice, they would get frustrated. Some of them would get frustrated when you ask them for so many things. Like we're like, okay, like can we have this pizza, but can we have it without the meat, without this cheese, without, and then some people was like, oh, so basically you just want the pizza and the sauce. It's kind of like, you know, some people get frustrated because they're not used to people really picking and changing up the menu. Like usually people just order something from the menu, but it's not our fault that the website advertised them having vegetarian options. So it kind of becomes one of those things like, yeah, you don't want to really frustrate people, but it's also, we didn't come like just hoping that there were options for us. It actually advertised. And now that is going to be my next biggest tip, the thing that we're going to do from now on, and the biggest thing that we've learned. So while we were there, we were researching literally vegan hotels, or hotels that are plant-based, like specifically plant-based. Because one mistake that I would say not to make, the same mistake that we made, is to choose a hotel because they say that they have vegetarian or vegan options. If you do choose a hotel like this and you're a vegetarian or vegan or plant-based, whatever you call yourself, call ahead of time. See if you can get a menu so you can see, because when people, you know, whoever makes the menu, when they're not vegetarian, when they're not plant-based, to them having 2 options off of a menu of like 15 things is good enough. But when you're there for a week, you know, at a time, that's not a lot of options when you have to keep eating the same thing every day, when you really pay for an all-inclusive resort. And for us, we don't drink, so unlimited liquor doesn't mean anything for us. It doesn't mean anything for us. Like, so that part of our all-inclusive resort, or that part of our all-inclusive, you know, amenities, is one thing that we wish we could just take off our bill. Like, hey, can we get a cheaper rate? Because we're not even going to drink this alcohol. But what we at least hope to have is like decent meals and have a variety of options. If they have several restaurants on the hotel, we want to have more than like 2 and 3 options that we can eat the whole time we stay. So like I said, the biggest thing we learned is that if you do go to a hotel that has plant-based options, or they say they have plant-based options, call ahead of time, look at the menu before you go to, so you can see if you are satisfied with those options. So like I said, we're plant-based, more vegan than vegetarian, because we don't eat milk. You know, we don't eat milk. We don't eat milk or meat. So when we saw a vegetarian, we were thinking like, oh, okay, so vegetarian, you know, all we have to do is remove this and then it'll, you know, be more vegan-like. Well, that's not the case. So like I said, call before you book a hotel, and make sure you can look at the menu so you can see what you have, see what they have, and see if you're pleased with the options. Because while we were here, I was researching hotels, literally plant-based hotels. Some of the hotels that had plant-based options, I would go on the menu and I'll be like, no, this is not good enough for me, because on this menu, or on these 5 restaurants, you have 2 restaurants that have a few vegan options. So that means I'm paying an all-inclusive rate for 5 restaurants. that's a selling point. Like, you're paying for the 5 restaurants, but I can only eat at 2, and of the 2 restaurants, I can only eat maybe 2 things off each menu. Like, that's not good enough for me because I know what I'm paying for. And like I said, we don't take advantage of alcohol because we don't drink. So that part is already, a wash for us. Like, we already are kind of losing on that, and we don't need the endless alcohol. If we wish we could get a credit for that. But either way, be careful. Make sure you look at the menus. And what I'm discovering now, I didn't know, but they actually have 100% plant-based hotels. Like, hotels that are like mainly like plant-based. Like, they don't serve any other kind of food. These are the ones that we looked into. Now, I don't know when we're gonna go, but I'm gonna definitely come in here and do an update, a review, just to see our experience. Now, they don't have plenty options. It's just like being plant-based and having like restaurant options. It's never like you have hundreds of restaurants you can go to, but just like a decent amount. So we actually found that there are some hotels that are 100% plant-based, and that was exciting for us because it's kind of like we always tired of just having options. Like, I'm tired of having options, like, especially with all inclusive. If it's a restaurant, or not a restaurant, but a resort where we have to pay for our own food, it's more acceptable because, we have to pay anyway. So we're gonna go, and then, we'll get like a few options. It's more acceptable when it's not all inclusive. Because like I said, when you pay for all inclusive, you're paying for all those different amenities. So it's not taking into accountability if you're a vegetarian. And, oh, hey, I'm just calling to let you know, I know your hotel has 5 restaurants, but I can only eat at 1 according to the menu. So, hey, can I get a cheaper rate? It doesn't work like that. So the fact is that we're really going to be looking to support these 100% plant-based resorts. And then we're just hoping that just these other resorts around here start to, get with the times, get more options for us so that we can go there. Because the hotel that we went to, like, we'll never go back there again unless they, like, really, like, get long, like, really increase the options significantly, because like I said, we barely had any options. So I give you the tips on how to survive if you get to one of these resorts where there's hardly any vegetarian or plant-based options. And then also what I would advise before you even book the trip, look at that menu, make the calls and ask about the menu. See if the chef is versed in preparing plant-based meals, and then definitely look into those 100% plant-based resorts, because that's going to be a great time. And for us, we're trying to have that luxury and still have that plant-based. So, like, it's not like we want to go to a place, I don't know, we have a specific style that we like. I love to be like in rooms that's like right off the beach. I like to see the water, especially like when I'm out the country. I love to be like along that coast where you can see the water. Like, when you have that balcony, that's like a must, having a balcony and then seeing the water. So it's like we don't want to trade one for the other. So that's what I'm saying. I'm excited for us to explore those options, but for sure, look at those options. I still have to organize them myself because I like read articles and stuff, and they had some hotels that had the options and then some that were like 100%, and it wasn't a whole bunch, and it wasn't a whole lot of places that I specifically want to go to, but we're gonna have to check them out, and we will check them out. But in the meantime, if you are in the situation that we were in, these are my survival tips, and I hope you found them useful.